Good morning, data folk, and welcome to Big Data London. I hope everyone here is enjoying the data revolution you're here to witness, and thanks for joining this session now, where I'm going to tell you a story of how we worked together with the org effectiveness team at British American Tobacco to build a data as a service solution within 3 months. But before the story, to put a name to my face, I'm Darshan, a consulting manager with Concentra Analytics. I like data, preferably in a structured tabular format that I can use to build data visualizations, interactive ones, to tell stories with, to generate insight and help teams make data-driven informed decisions. So let's start the story. The BAT org effectiveness team. They're a very curious team, living and breathing the vision of making the organization and its biggest asset, the people, performing to the best of their abilities. So how do they try and action this mission? Basically by trying to understand the organization and answer questions about the organization. And they have a lot of questions. So when we engaged with the team, we segmented these questions or grouped these together not arbitrarily, but into a logical 4 buckets: org effectiveness, talent acquisition, L&D, and talent management. So org effectiveness, what do we mean by this? It's all about trying to understand whether the organization is performing efficiently. How are they doing in terms of key performance indicators and targets that were set by the business? How are they doing in relation to design standards and principles that were set? Are there any outliers? And if there are any outliers, why do these outliers exist? We then try to look at it from a different perspective, from the perspective of an employee journey within the organization, all the way from when the employee joins the business. So what is the source of hiring? What is the successful source of hiring? What makes a good hire? How do you improve on this to make sure that the right talent is brought into the business? So those are the kind of questions we tried to answer there. We then transitioned into L&D. So what is the investment that is in place within the organization? How is that investment spread out? Is it providing the right return on investment for the business? And where are the opportunities to improve on the development facilities that the organization currently has for the employees? And lastly, we looked at managing the talent that's already there on an ongoing basis. So this is all around understanding the performance, tracking the performance, trying to identify correlations of what is necessary for good performance and whether the performance is being properly rewarded, are the right incentives in place. Now, we can spend hours discussing each and every single question out here and even more that's outside of here. But the main objective of answering these questions is, number 1, to be able to benchmark internally and externally. Number 2, to identify drivers of business outcomes. And most importantly, number 3, to help the organization and its leaders be able to ask the right questions and have the discussions about these business outcomes. So what was necessary was to create an analytics as a service solution. Why so? So the data to answer these questions sits in disparate corporate systems in very siloed environments. You can analyze the data in those silos in their own right, but it's a very small piece of the puzzle. What you do need to do is bring it all together to build a holistic understanding of the organization. And this requires an integration of this data so that it's accessible for everyone in the business in one single place. When we mean integrating, what we mean is bringing together data from core corporate systems, and this might be HR or finance, as well as data from external data sources, from third-party agencies that may, for example, be managing your marketing campaigns, or have valuable information about industry benchmarks and market information, for example, economic metrics. In the case of the org effectiveness team at BAT, some of the systems we were working with, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but just an illustration of some of the systems. What we wanted to do was integrate data from the HRIS system, SuccessFactors, and from their business planning and consolidation system, SAP, along with data from external sources such as LinkedIn, which manages their marketing campaigns, Lynda.com, which is their learning and development portal, which employees use to access training materials and other resources, as well as data, for example, from Mercer, which provides information about compensation benchmarks at an industry and market level. So we wanted to bring all of this together into one self-service system. So what does this look like at a high level? What we did was we took in data, which I mentioned, so core data from corporate systems, external data from third-party agencies, as well as locally managed Excel files that the team manages. Now, why is this important? A lot of contextual and reference information is not held in corporate systems, and it evolves very quickly and dynamically, and does sometimes need to be managed in an Excel file on someone's laptop. But the rest of the business also needs to see this. So what we did was we brought all of these together as data feeds into a people data warehouse. And I'll talk about the actual product DataPlus in a little bit in a second. So the data is dimensionally modeled into a data warehouse, on top of which we put governed data views, which are created for specific business use cases. And these governed views are then consumed by the business for either ad hoc analysis, or during this project, we created operational dashboards for the HR community, which were created within 6 months of starting this process, as well as for, say, machine learning experiments. We had one machine learning experiment, which was building a balanced random forest model to predict employees with high flight risk. So this was a proof of concept model that we are now productionizing in the Azure environment. So a little bit about this black box. I want to demystify it a bit for the audience. So what is DataPlus? DataPlus is a software as a service, fully combined data warehouse solution sitting on Azure. It can be accessed using an internet browser with single sign-on credentials. You log in, and with a no-code approach, configure these data feeds. These could be dimensions, facts, mapping tables. Using Kimball methodology, you create a dimensional model. Now, the platform is having certain algorithms that help to identify data types and speed up this configuration process. So it identifies data types. You can add business logic, create validation rules, create additional calculated fields. And this builds the heart of the solution, a dimensional model for people analytics. This dimensional model is designed to be extensible. And when I say extensible, what it means is you can add to it and remove things out of it with a no-code approach, without any SQL writing. On top of that data warehouse, you then create these governed data views for specific business use cases that are then distributed and consumed by the business. And this can be done from within the product using an assisted SQL builder. So this is the only part of the product where some coding experience is required, because it is custom for every single client for consumption of analytics. What we estimate with this solution, over 7,000 hours of data gathering has been eliminated from HR business partners' lives globally. And another estimation is that over 300 hours a year of data wrangling, data manipulation, and data modeling by the org effectiveness team has been saved and can be repurposed for other value-add activities. They would often get bombarded with frequently asked questions where they would need to do the same manual consolidation and wrangling of data to answer these questions, and now their time is freed up. Now, one thing that we couldn't really quantify in terms of benefit was the cultural shift of the analytics as a service solution. What we did within this project was, within 6 months, create over 30 operational dashboards for people analytics, which have been shared with over 170 users globally with appropriate security permissions. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail of the solution or the actual tool. If you do want to learn more, please come and visit us at Stand 451, where we can demo DataPlus, as well as have a chat about the actual solution and the analytics. What I'd like to do now, however, is invite onto the stage Mario, the group head of people and org analytics at BAT, and Damien, the analytics account manager for corporate functions, to share their story about this solution. That works. So yes, thanks for joining me for this fireside chat, Mario, Damien. So to warm up, what I'd like to do is ask you to tell the audience about your role so that they understand your perspective and where it is coming from.
Hello guys, so my name is Mario Calero. I'm the Group Head of People and Org Analytics for British American Tobacco. I've been so for the last 2 years, and I was basically tasked with creating the operating model of how analytics was going to run in HR.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Damien Ducano. I am the Data Reporting and Analytics Global Lead at British American Tobacco for corporate functions. So I cover mostly finance, HR, treasury, and our business services. I've been there for 9 years, and the whole data revolution is something that's really caught on at BAT, probably pretty much over the last 3 or 4 years or so properly.
All right, so first question. Before the project, what were the challenges that the team was facing, and what is it that they wanted to achieve? So let's start with your perspective, Mario.
Look, I think like everyone else, we wanted to have a leadership team that was happy, and they had very clear concerns. They wanted speed. Basically, they wanted insights, and they wanted insights to better make decisions. That basically meant that we needed to harness the amount of data that we have today. We used to take nearly 3 months to just present a headcount report. You have to understand we're in 185 countries and there are legacy systems and so forth. So the speed was something that was a must. The second thing was, like any other organization, they wanted enough versatility to cut the information in the different ways that everyone wants to see it. You might want to see it functionally, you want to see it geographically. So they wanted enough slicing and dicing capability to fit all the requirements of the analysis. Obviously, when you're doing this sort of analysis, they also wanted benchmarking, and they wanted external benchmarking. So they wanted to fit our data into things that came from Mercer, Linda, whoever was providing information that we wanted to compare against. More so than anything, from an HR perspective, we also wanted to give back to the HRBPs user experience. VLOOKUPs and looking at data was something that was really hindering our teams, and from an engagement model perspective, it was also terrifying. So we wanted the user to actually go into a system that was simple enough for them to use, to get the information. You saw before what we call the frequently asked questions, and actually deal with the time that they are now free to do analysis, and actually come back and say, we want to answer hypotheses that we've created based on what has been presented. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all of this had to happen in a very short period of time because we needed to generate the credibility for the organization to understand once we have this, we are actually going to change the organization and bring more value to it.
So Damien, from an analytics perspective at the organization, how did that work?
So it's my job to take what the HR function, what Mario wants, and to actually turn it into reality with no fuss, right? It needs to be usable and it has to look good. I taught a bulldog to skateboard, and that was easy. This was tough. I had 3 months. We've tried to do HR analytics before at BAT. I think most of you out here who have done analytics have this is not the first time we're starting, right? But we tried to do it in a very functional way, in a very siloed way. So it was just analytics for HR, it was just analytics for finance, operations, and marketing were doing their own thing. And one thing that we did at British American Tobacco back in 2017 is we globalized our analytics function. So we now have a single global analytics function that has 3 leads in it, myself, and then also marketing and ops. But the biggest value that we realized is that data on its own in single functions is not worth very much. We realize that our biggest value comes from when we get data from disparate sources and we bring operations data together with marketing data, together with finance data, and together with HR. So although this topic is very much about HR, there is a lot of finance data that came in here. We also had to get our data out of our global corporate systems. So I've got success factors predominantly for HR, single global success factor systems. I have a single global SAP. I don't know anyone in the audience who tries getting data out of SAP or any of those other things, but to try and do an agile project where we are going to deliver value to the business in 3 months, which also involves ripping data out of a corporate system which is GDPR compliant, SOX compliant. We have about 2 million records, 2,500 updates a day. That's just in SuccessFactors, plus all the additional stuff coming from LinkedIn, Mercer, benchmarking, and to try and get all of that data to put it together, put a reference model on top, and then provide a user experience which hides all of that so they don't know. In a global dashboard, we have one single global dashboard accessed all around the world, all by authorizations. So we don't replicate the dashboard at all. It's just one, and it has to look amazing. That was my challenge. I don't know.
Okay. So we've heard a bit about the pain. So the next transitioning to it is what were the solutions you were considering to overcome this pain, and why did you settle on the Azure DataPlus Power BI solution?
So one of the important things we did when we globalized the analytics function is that we also had to determine a global analytics strategy and where we were going to bring the data in. Saying that you're going to create an enterprise data lake is very easy. Everyone is creating an enterprise data lake. But making an enterprise data lake cross-functional and one that actually works, that will enable self-service for the business is actually quite difficult. And one of the missions that we had was that as a sort of an IT function underneath, was that we didn't want to own the data. We've made that mistake in the past. You know, we would say, oh, the data is ours, rubbish. We need to democratize the data. And we need to make sure that we put that in the hands of the decision makers, and that was the key thing. And in order to do that, we decided upon Azure, so as our cloud platform, and we went for Power BI. Although we do have a few other solutions, Power BI is the one that is really driving all of this. And so we needed a cloud-based technology that was going to work with Azure. DataPlus was something that we looked at early on, and we looked at the amount of effort that was going to take to code and to put all of this stuff together. HR is specific because everything is time-based, and that's actually quite tricky to do in analytics. You need to track an employee from the moment they maybe apply, so before they're even an employee, all the way through their learning cycle, potentially to when they leave. So trying to mash all of that time-based stuff together is quite challenging. But the Azure DataPlus stack really helped, and we were able to reduce a project that we thought was going to take 9 months to 3.
So that was the underlying decision for going with the solution. So now I'm going to pivot and go right to the end of the solution being delivered. And I want to share with you a slide that I absolutely loved, one produced by Mario. So the reason I love this slide was because it probably encapsulates the emotion that the project team had very, very well. This is exactly what we were feeling. So what I'd like Mario to do is talk us through a little bit about this slide and tell us about the benefit that the leadership team is now realizing.
Yeah, I never imagined this slide would end up in a place like this, but the intention is simple. When you're dealing with leadership teams, you actually need to explain it to them very simply, right? And when we started this project, the global HRLT came to us and said, why do you actually need this modeling engine when you've got SuccessFactors and you can get the information from it, right? We said, well, you need to understand that this is a huge beast that needs to be tamed. And the explanation that we went behind it is you have it at any given record, at any given time, 70,000 records, right? But it's massively changing. Plus you've got history. We had to pump in more than 380,000 records into it. You have to link multiple data sets, right? And the explanation to them was, we're promising HRBPs not to ever have to do a VLOOKUP again, because they're going to have all this capability done elsewhere. And once that's done, once this beast has been actually tamed, we can talk analytics. And that was incredibly important for them to understand, because they just expected us to go into SuccessFactors, because this is actually the way they explained it to us, and tell us what's wrong. And it doesn't work that way. So we simplified the slide to say, we are now linking data together, we're organizing data, and once that's done, we can go to the next stage. And in all fairness, the next stage was what they were expecting, which is simplification of the process, right? 7,200 hours out of HRBPs, multiple filtering capabilities, dynamic filtering that would allow you to see things in the cross-function or in the cross-region. And all of that was delivered. But more than that, we also had a lot of capability to democratize data. We wanted self-service. Most of you are in companies right now that are asking for leaner processes, for more self-service and engagement. This was it. HRBPs will now be able to basically draw the numbers themselves. They won't have to go back to a center of expertise. It also does a lot of allowing to tweak the data in the way that we require it. Versatility was something critical for the selling point. We've got standard structures within SF. As soon as you put modeling capability in it, you can change capability of filtering whenever you want. So you now need new MRU hierarchies, we can do that, right? Based on a model. And that was actually very interesting for HRBPs because their comeback to us was finally, I can see the data in the way I want to. We also had a lot of what we call a cultural shift, right? Any of you that's working a company with transformation, they'll associate it to downsizing, right? And this wasn't the case. But in most of those processes, you're gonna hear, guys, we're now gonna ask you to do something, right? And this was one of the first times where we were actually saying, we're gonna ask you to do now something because we're leaner in the organization, but they came back to us and said, it's actually much simpler. We can go through this, and they had a user experience. Concentra helped us out a lot on making sure that it was a journey when you went through the dashboard. You went into an overview, then you went into a little bit more analytics, then you went into the deep dive. So every time someone was using it, it felt like an actual user experience of who and how they were going to use it. Yeah?
Thanks, Mario. Damien, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I want to add there is the most important thing from my perspective was democratizing the data. I'm going to reiterate again, especially in large corporates like BAT, we try to own the data, and we're trying to do absolutely the opposite, and that's to put the data back into the hands of people who know it best. That's those people in the end markets, those people that are at the coalface, those people who are recruiting, who are managing talent, and one of the fantastic side effects is that when you show the data, especially the first time, I would often get a bit of a challenge, especially from Mario, and it would be the data is wrong, we cannot show it. And, you know, I'm going to say, no, the data is right. We should show it. Yes, it's wrong, but it's what's in the system. So if we're going to challenge and change culture, then we need to take ownership of the data, and we need to get our core systems to be absolutely right. And one of the beauties of this is that it shows it. And it shows it in a very graphical and a very open way, and it means that people can have a frank conversation, and we can start to have a look at, well, what are the things that we need to do first to start to change. And I think that for me, this is the power of analytics. It's not just that you can make business decisions, but you also can actually start to see, well, hey, look, you know, what's wrong, and what are some of the root causes.
All right, I'm going to now pick on one of the comments you made, Damien, which was around the project finished, the project for creating the data warehouse finished in 3 months versus, say, an estimated 9 months. What I want to get out of that is, what's the experience that you had based on your previous projects that you've gone through over the years? Currently here, what was the experience, and what was the difference that you observed?
So I've been running HR transformation projects or data and analytics projects for a very long time, and I have a simple mantra essentially, and that is make sure you have one team with one goal. I prefer to co-locate the team as much as possible, and we bring in expertise where possible. There was no distinction between the business function and the IT function. We speak exactly the same language. I actually personally sit with them. I don't sit with IT. I know these things are actually small, but they make a massive difference if you're trying to do an agile project. We use the word agile all the time, but to actually really live and breathe it is a different thing. When we work with our partners, especially Concentra here, you know, the first thing I said to them when they came in is, here is our objective, here is our end game, and I'm going to give you challenges. I'm not interested in paper and documentation and all of that kind of stuff up front. I want to see a product, I want to see prototyping, I want to show the business. As soon as we've got something, let's put it in front of them. And then they can say yes or no, and we'll move on. We'll make mistakes along the way, of course, but we can go back and course correct. And you know what? We never made a big mistake. We made lots of little ones, and we fixed them very, very quickly. Having DataPlus as a tool that didn't require a lot of coding and could be picked up by the business as well was something that meant that we could do that storytelling and that agile approach actually properly. And everyone was on board to the point where I think the HRLT just kind of left us alone. The best thing that can happen if you're delivering a project in your company is that people at the top leave you alone and they just trust you to deliver. And if you can bring that at the beginning, then half your battle is won, I think.
Cool. So I think it's basically the agile and fail quick philosophy that was demonstrated in the project. Anyway, I think we're out of time, but I'd like to end with one last question. It goes without saying that you're here because you're endorsing us or recommending us, but I'll fish for a little bit more. How would you summarize the product and team in 3 words?
Look, I think I've told you this. You were incredibly committed, incredibly dynamic, and there was a huge personal factor of how you treated us and the team. I can't explain it differently because I come from an HR background. I was in Reward as an HRD, so I'm not the analytics specialist. And these guys helped us actually understand the structure of what analytics needs to look like. You've got data, you've got visualization, but they all merged together and they worked incredibly well. They brought to the table actually value where we didn't know there was, and they recommended a lot of things that we wanted. They always took our suggestions in a way that was taken to the point. I understand what you want to do, and I understand what the business value is. Let me show you a better way to present this in a dashboard and or in a dynamic file. Yeah. Cool. So it was very good. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome, Mario. Damien, 3 words.
That was 3 words, Mario. This is my challenge. Data-driven value from me are my 3 words.
All right. Thank you very much, Mario and Damien.